Unit 3, it becomes a little bit confusing. That's why I left it like that. Unit 3 will take it up next. Okay, thank you. Okay, text 20, 4.20. 19? Correct, 19. Sorry. 19.
काम संकल्प वर्जिता ज्ञानाग्नि दग्ध कर्माणां tam aho panditam buddha. One is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a worker from whom the reaction of work have been burnt up by the fire of perfect knowledge.
In 5 verses, the Lord speaks of karma as the form of jnana. In other words, the same activity of karma is now producing the effect of jnana. Normally, we will expect karma to produce material pious results. We will not expect it to produce systems for liberation. Now it produces, when you do it in the right manner, then it produces spiritual realization. It produces detachment and realization. It has a spiritual nature. Yes. It now functions as if it were one of the jnana activities. When his heart becomes pure, the execution of desireless duties, then all his accumulated karmas will have been burnt up by the fire of self-knowledge, which has made its appearance. He is said to be learned, who engages in all karmas, while devoid of desire for enjoyment, and has burnt up all karmas by the fire of knowledge. All prescribed karmas and forbidden actions that he does are burnt up by the fire of knowledge, attained by Nishkama Karma. Then his karmas attain the form of knowledge. Prabhupada makes it very simple. Only a person in full knowledge can understand the activities of a person in Krishna consciousness. Because the person in Krishna consciousness is devoid of all kinds of sense gratificatory propensities, it is to be understood that he has burnt up the reactions of his word by knowledge of his constitutional position as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is actually learned who has attained to such perfection of knowledge. Development of this knowledge of eternal servitorship to the Lord is compared to fire. Such a fire, one kindle, can burn up all kinds of reactions to this. There's another way. Here I have shown Bhakti Thakur's, Baladev Bhushan's way of making spiritual progress with different options and so on. Then there's a simpler pathway which has been outlined. If you are Madhurama, you may engage in your advanced activities, planning activities, bhakti activities. You want to only engage in planning activities and bhakti activities. Then you do bhakti activities. The Varashma Dharma is very, very easy to understand. Sannyasis are supposed to engage in jnana. That we understand that on the customers within a community dedicated to liberation, they would engage in jnana for the activity. This is understood. It is a Kevin is understood to be a very mature. You can see this list of 30 duties that the person is so pure that he, in addition to avoiding adharma, he even avoids Varnadharma, Freedom. He even avoids these 21 duties of jnana. and is only executing one or more of these 9 times. He is very, very pure to continuously maintain. There's one thing to try it out for a trial more. Stick to it, it's not a joke. So this is another way of some try like this once over the lifetimes or within one very long. Try to move it. It is commonly understood that all Grah Tyagis, they should only engage in the Jnana activities and Bhakti activities. They should avoid all other activities, even if it's prescribed in Shastra. And certainly they must give up adharma. By adharma, they are talking about activities like this, primarily. What is it? Candle itself. These activities, these are all typical adharmic activities. Basically, everything which is forbidden in Shastra is dharma, but these are most significant. Dirtiness, dishonesty, thievery, faithlessness, useless quarrel, lust, anger, and hankering constitute the nature of those in the lowest position outside the Varnashram system. Shaucham, Anrutam, Steyam, Nastikyam. Faithlessness means you don't accept Vedic authority. Shushka Vigra, useless quarreling, Kama, lust, Krodha, anger, Tarsha, hankering, lust, anger, hankering, everything outside of Vedic. So they are understood to be symptoms of, primary symptoms of adharma. So when we talk about 4 regulative principles, this is also included. It's also included. Not that somebody takes initiation and after that he goes and steals somebody else's property and all. Understood, when you say we avoid meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, gambling, these things are all understood. Not that you go beat up people. All of these are meant to be done. Only a person in full knowledge can understand the activities of a person in Krishna consciousness. Because the person in Krishna consciousness is devoid of all kinds of sense gratification propensities. It is to be understood that he has burnt up the reactions of his world by perfect knowledge of his constitutional position as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is actually learned who has attained to such perfection of knowledge. Development of this knowledge of eternal servitorship to the Lord is compared to fire. Such a fire, once kindled, can burn up all kinds of reactions. In fact, in Sri Baladev Devushan's model also, when one attains detachment and realization, that is when he jumps up to the next stage of maximal bhakti. Because now he has understood, oh, it is really true. Really, I am a dependent servant of Krishna. Really, I should be surrendered unto Krishna's service. Really, I should be doing Pravanam, Kirtanam. This should be my real duty. The other duty is not so serious actually. He comes to that point of realizing. 20.
Bhakta karma phalasanga nitya nirasaya karmani abhipraya pratopi naiva kaschit karoti saha. Abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, they were satisfied and independent. He performs no fruitive action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings.
This verse elaborates the point. Having given up attachment to the results of work, satisfied with constant realization of the self to be accomplished in the future, devoid of taking shelter of anything even for livelihood, a person so qualified, though engaged in actions, does nothing at all. This is the state of Arurukshi, one aspiring for the goal, in which one produces steadiness in jnana under the pretext of performing actions. So he is actually interested in internal spiritual realization. So he is not like these materialistic people who have no sense of spiritual development. Externally, he may be going through the same set of activities that they are going through, but he will only deal with the external world to the minimal extent that's required, because he is interested in spiritual realization. This indicates that one should understand that the very nature of vikarma or kamikarma is creation of bondage. Free from the desire to acquire and maintain objects, satisfied with his own bliss, the person who is giving up attachment to results of his karmas, engages in all karmas, does nothing at all. Is that correct? No. Yes, it's correct. Though doing all karmas, he is not bound by the results of karmas. His action, his karmas are without reactions. The freedom from the bondage of actions is possible only in Krishna consciousness when one is doing everything for Krishna. A Krishna conscious person acts out of pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he has no attraction for the results of their action. He is not even attached to his personal maintenance, for everything is left to Krishna. Nor is he anxious to secure things, nor to protect things already in his possession. He does his duty to the best of his ability and leaves everything to Krishna. See, amongst those who are not taken to Krishna consciousness in a serious manner, they have a lot of insecurity about their situation. Whereas those who are making spiritual progress, whether any of these three tracks, slow track or the fast track or the ultra fast track, they don't have this kind of anxiety. They are aware that Krishna is taking care of them from the background, and Krishna also makes them understand that. So, when they are in the first stage, they are very clear about it, very patient, tolerant, executing that activity. They don't have unnecessary anxiety for yoga kshema. They don't have unnecessary anxiety to possess things that they don't have or to protect things that they have. It is actually a certain type of anxiety. That anxiety is not there. They will do everything that's required, but only to that limit. They will not go beyond that limit when it comes to dealing with anything material. Such an unattached person is always free from the resultant reactions of good and bad. It is as though he were not doing anything. This is the sign of akarma, or actions without fruitive reactions. Any other action, therefore, devoid of Krishna consciousness, is binding upon the worker, and that is the real aspect of the karma, as explained here and before. 21.
Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence, perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and act only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions.
Three verses now speak of the state of arudha, or one who has already reached the goal, steadiness and jnana. He from whom desire for result has departed, whose mind and body are controlled, who is devoid of possessions of material objects because his purpose is only to see the Atma, does not incur sin. This is so, even though he engages in action to gain material objects to support his body. Keeping one's body and mind subservient to intelligence, rejecting desire for result in all acquisition, not endeavoring for possessing. He does karmas only for maintaining his body, making body and mind dependent on intelligence, becoming free of the desire for results in all acquisition, rejecting possessiveness towards acquired objects. He does karmas only for maintaining his body. By that, he does not generate sin or piety from his karmas. A Krishna conscious person does not expect good or bad results in his activity. His mind and intelligence are fully controlled. He knows that because he is part and parcel of the Supreme, the part played by him as part and parcel of the whole is not his own activity, but is only being done through him by the Supreme. When the hand moves, it does not move out of its own accord, but by the endeavor of the whole body. The Krishna conscious person is always dovetailing with the Supreme desire, for he has no desire for personal self gratification. He moves exactly like a part of a machine. As a machine part requires oiling and cleaning for maintenance, so a Krishna conscious man maintains himself by his work just to remain fit for action in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. He is therefore immune to all the reactions of his endeavors. Like an animal, he has no proprietorship even over his own body. A cruel proprietor of an animal sometimes kills the animal in his possession, yet the animal does not protest, nor does it have any real independence. A Krishna conscious person, fully engaged in self-realization, has very little time to falsely possess any material object. For maintaining body and soul, he does not require unfair means of accumulating wealth. He does not therefore become contaminated by such material sins. He is free from all reactions to his actions. 22.
यदृच्छाभावसन्तुष्टो द्वन्द्वचेतोविमत्सरः धम्मशीलावशीलौ च विद्वादीनिबाध्यते. He who is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady in both success and failure, is never entangled, although performing action.
This verse shows that one should not make extra effort to attain food or clothing for one's bodily maintenance. There should be effort, but not extra effort, because that will entangle him with feelings of possessiveness. The basic idea is this: we have to take care of our body without becoming increasingly materialistic. We have to take care of our bodily needs without developing all kinds of material desires, increasing material desires. That person who is satisfied with what comes of its own accord without asking for it. He is tolerant of dualities such as heat and cold. He does not have hatred of those who attack him. He is equal, being devoid of joy at what comes of its own accord and devoid of lamentation when nothing comes. So when he is, let's say, he's working in some office or something, he doesn't become delighted when he gets some bonus and something is cut. Everybody gets a cut. He also gets a cut. He doesn't become very disturbed about it also. Like during the pandemic, we saw throughout the world, many people, they had their salary cut to different degrees. So then when a situation like that comes, he doesn't get too disturbed. Though doing actions to maintain his body in this way, he's not bound by the various actions. He's not contaminated because of the influence of steady jnana, realization. A Krishna conscious person does not make much endeavor even to maintain his body. He is satisfied with gains which are obtained of their own accord. He neither begs nor borrows, but he labors honestly as far as in his power, and is satisfied with whatever is obtained by his own honest labor. He is therefore independent in his livelihood. He does not allow anyone's service to hamper his own service in Krishna consciousness. However, for the service of the Lord, he can participate in any kind of action without being disturbed by the duality of the material world. He is steady both in success and in failure. Material success, material failure. These signs are visible when one is fully in transcendental knowledge. Actually, text 21, 22, 23, they are actually talking of a person who is a little bit more advanced in realization.
Someone asked question like, to what extent someone should go for the material needs? Somebody having a job, he wants a higher position. He, like, it's called prayasip, so he is endorsed for something. And he said, this will benefit in my bhakti life.
How will it benefit in spiritual progress? What if he becomes obsessed with then in the company everybody starts taking loan to buy the latest car model? Then he will also feel like having the latest car. And then he will become car conscious. A number of our devotees are quite conscious about all these stupid things. Very much.
They say like, if I have a big house, I can call devotees and have keep.
That's fine, but then if the house is burnt up, you use some reason. And if you have a heart attack, you cannot chant 16 rounds. Then we know that. You know that, no? Asaktasya Vishaya. First of all, whatever I am utilizing in Krishna's service, under the heading of Yukta Vairagya, to prove that I am anasakta. Not asaktasya Vishayani Yathartha Vedanta Vedanta Krishna Yukta Vairagya. That's Yukta Bhoga, that's not Yukta Vairagya. Yatharham Vedanta, that's another. Only as much as they deserve. That is why in the Varnashram system, things are much more clear. You belong to this Varna, you belong to this Ashrama. This much, you have something called the quota. Prabhu is writing about quota, and I think also. Today's world, nobody understands this quota. There's no quota. Nothing called quota. Sky is the limit in Krishna consciousness. This is not even karma yoga. I don't know. I cannot call it the karma yoga. I don't know what to call it.
On that, it's like everything you can employ in Krishna's service.
Everything you can employ in Krishna's service within scriptural boundaries. Otherwise, the effect will not come. It's like that cooking, putting something on the roof and putting some fire here. The effect is not there, then what is the point? Ultimately, it is the effect. Lust, anger, greed has not disappeared from my heart, they are not reduced. So what is the point? Then why go through all this big Adambar, big, Krishna consciousness thing, Yatra, that, so many things we do now. The effect has to come now. People will only look for the effect. At least in India, if you want to preach, they will only look for the effect. They will say, okay, you talk big dialogue, I'll see you after 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I'm here alive, you are also alive, we'll see each other. Then you prove that your process is working. First you apply it in your life, I will see it. After it works, then I will accept it. People will demand that. They're not foolish people. It's not simply some religious activity. You have to prove. That too, in today's world, religion is bad word. And they think that when you become religious, you become selfish, you become terrorist, you become all kinds of. So there are many, it's very fashionable to become atheistic. So you have to prove that you are far better off as a public servant by being a religious person. For all that effect, without effect, we cannot breathe sufficiently also. So you have to be careful about that. That's why another reason why Varnashram Dharma is important. Basically, without Varna, you're stuck in. Imagine an ISKCON without ashrama. How much confused it will be. Like that only is currently confused without Varna. Everybody is Brahmana. Or everybody is Vaishnava. That's even more confused. So many impure Vaishnavas. What is that?
I saw like the ISKCON center was started, some project. In starting, no one was devotee. They saw the people over 15 years, 20 years. Now the surrounding all the villages, all are become Krishna conscious. Like they do. They observe what you do, and they gradually all full village take to the process, not just one.
People actually they do what we do. They don't do what we say. So if we happen to be good, and even a small ratio, that small ratio is important. Within ISKCON's population, amongst those who like ISKCON, those who like we expect a certain percentage to take first initiation. Within that, we expect a certain percentage to be Brahmanical. If they have taken second initiation, they have to stick to the Brahmanical principle. Okay. So then now that Varna is clear, Brahmana. Brahmana means you have to first of all live in a temple. You cannot be working as a Shudra in some company and then what Brahmana. Then we are like all these funny Brahmins in India. They are working for some Shudra software company and they claim to be Brahmins also. Brahmana means you live in a Vishnu temple. What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to do Patana, Vatana, Yajana, Yajana, Dana, do that. And you, Brahmana is accepting a vow of voluntary poverty. Brahmana should be as poor as possible. The more poor, the greater he is. That's how Brahmanas are. Otherwise, the effect will not come. You can say, oh, no, but within ISKCON, it's not like that. But how long you can go on with Shruti Smriti Purana, Pancharatra, Vidvan, I can't be Hare, whatever. Will simply create deluxe chaos. That's it. You can say that within ISKCON, it doesn't matter. Oh, whole ISKCON will suffer chaos. Even we are under Krishna's rules. The Krishna's rules. Cannot change the laws of nature. So it will come. If devotees take it up, even if that small percentage, even if say 10% of ISKCON's initiated devotees, they accept Brahmanical restriction. So it is a very good number, actually. Very, very good number. Just like we don't accept everyone, we don't think everyone should become sannyasi. Small percentage only becomes sannyasi. But that sannyasis will get strict. How inspiring it is. One sannyasi comes to a yatra or a tour. That one sannyasi will inspire some 1,000 families. So like that, the Brahmanical dual is there fixed in their principles. So much of inspiration is wrong period. So everything has to be very careful. Okay, let's move on. Text 23.
मुक्तस्य ज्ञानावस्थितचेतसा यज्ञाचरतः कर्म समाग्रम प्रविलीयते. The work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who is fully situated in transcendental knowledge merges entirely into transcendence.
For the person who is nishkama, devoid of attraction and repulsion, whose mind is absorbed in knowledge of his own Atma, and who performs those actions while thinking that they are for the pleasure of Vishnu, all previous karmas, causes of bondage are destroyed. Okay. Becoming fully Krishna conscious, one is free from all dualities and thus is free from the contaminations of the material modes. He can become liberated because he knows his constitutional position in relationship with Krishna. Thus his mind cannot be drawn from Krishna consciousness. Consequently, whatever he does for Krishna, who is the primeval Vishnu. Therefore, all his works are technically sacrifices because sacrifice aims at satisfying the Supreme Personality, Supreme Person, Vishnu, Krishna. The resultant reactions to all such works certainly merge into transcendence. One does not suffer material effects. In other words, his karmic reactions are getting cut out, deleted, which means he's becoming spiritually healthy. That's what it means. (24)
ब्रह्महवि ब्रह्माग्नौ ब्रह्मणहुतं ब्रह्मैव तेन गन्तव्यं ब्रह्म कर्म समाधिना. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activity, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature.
If we see the word meaning, then we understand the contribution is spiritual in nature. The butter is the supreme being, which is offered by the spirit soul in the fire of spiritual consummation. The spiritual kingdom is to be reached by him because of his complete absorption in spiritual activities. Baladevi devotion, having explained that performing prescribed activities takes on the form of jnana by including in them the quest for the distinctive jivatma, the Lord now describes how an action, along with its components, takes on the form of jnana by searching out the supreme atma, the Lord. So in other words, he realizes himself and he begins the pursuit of trying to realize the supreme being also. I want someone to read Bhakti Thakur's explanation.
Here how jnana is produced by karmas in the form of yajna. Later I will describe the various types of yajna. Now I will discuss the main principle of yajna. Please listen. The spiritual tattva is completely different from the material world. The effort to carry out material action is unavoidable for the jiva bound in matter. In that material action, whatever can be perceived as spiritual, when performed properly, is called yajna. When a spiritual condition manifests in matter, it is called Brahman. That Brahman is my light or mass of rays. When the 5 angas of yajnas, offering, oblation, fire, priest, and result, become situated in Brahman, then it becomes proper yajna. When a person concentrates in samadhi by making actions full of Brahman, he performs all his actions as a yajna. The instrument of offering, the oblation of ghee, the fire and sacrificial priest, that is one's whole existence, all become Brahman in nature. Thus, his goal is also Brahman.
All activities in Krishna consciousness can lead one ultimately to the spiritual goal which is described here. There are various activities in Krishna consciousness, and all of them will be described in the following verses. Meaning that there are different types of karma yoga, which Krishna will start to talk about. But for the present, just the principle of Krishna consciousness is described. So right now, he's only describing this much. Now, in case you are interested, I must point out that Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur has his own terminology for particular combinations. When karma is predominant, when there is a mixture of, as a general principle, there is how we labels. Suppose there is a combination of karma and bhakti. That means the person is doing both his karma duties and his bhakti duties. But most of the time goes to karma. Then the label that he gives is bhakti mixture of karma. But when in the combination, bhakti is prominent, then that combination he calls it karma mishra bhakti. The distinction is there between bhakti mishra karma and karma mishra bhakti. So here also we notice that karma is predominant first stage, and then bhakti becomes predominant. So this is also Krishna consciousness. It's not that it's not Krishna consciousness, but it is not predominantly Krishna consciousness. But even then, the bhakti element inside the combination of karma jnana bhakti has sufficient power. Like sometimes there are certain, like for instance, even in a glass of milk. A glass of milk is, let's say, 200 ml of milk. You pour honey into it. You may just pour 10 drops of honey. But that completely changes the flavor of that 200 ml of milk. Similarly, a little bit of bhakti, just a small bit of bhakti that has been put in here. And that also you are having as the ultimate goal, eternal service to the Lord. So if you started daily performance of bhakti, you will Okay. So you can understand here, Prabhupada, one thing with Prabhupada's label, ways of label, he is bhakti centered. He doesn't, like Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, when he talks about bhakti, he says he's only talking of Kevala Bhakti, Gunibhuta Bhakti. Gunibhuta Bhakti, he does not call it bhakti at all. He says because it is not predominantly bhakti, labels are given according to what is predominant. So from his perspective, those of us who are just few hours a day, we are engaged in exclusive Krishna conscious activities. From his perspective, we are non-devotees. You start doing like 12 hours a day, exclusive devotional service. Only then, what we call intense devotees, serious devotees. Only that you consider the standard is very high. But Bharadeva devotion, he accepts bhaktas. Prabhupada also, he presents Karma Yoga as Krishna consciousness. Typically, he presents Karma Yoga as Krishna consciousness. Ramanujacharya also is more liberal, Vaishnava. So you can see that in that example, even a few drops of honey can make it sweet. But imagine you had a whole cup of honey and a few drops. So Pradhanibhuta Bhakti is of that type. And imagine you had honey with no milk also. What would that be? So it does have its effect. But we should keep in mind the mean and the goal must have bhakti. Otherwise, you are not considered a bhakta. We engage in service to Krishna, Shravanam, Kirtanam, and so on a daily basis, with the desire to come to the point of uninterrupted engagement eternally. Then it is called bhakti. Then we are called bhaktas. That process is accepted as a form of devotion service. Whether you choose to progress slowly or fastly, that's a different matter. But you are accepted as a devotee. Those terms and conditions are there. But for present, just the principle of Krishna consciousness is described. A conditioned soul entangled in material contamination is sure to act in the material atmosphere. And yet he has to get out of such an environment. The process by which the conditioned soul can get out of the material atmosphere is Krishna consciousness. For example, a person who is suffering from a disorder of the bowels due to overindulgence in milk products is cured by another milk product, namely curds. Dahi, what they call yogurt. Huh? This is not cheese, no? No, because the word curd in certain dialects of English refer to actually cheese.
When I was serving giving curd, giving curd.
Yeah. They call it curd.
American.
I think it's American English to call it curd. And I knew the word yogurt from before, but I saw it being actively used only in American English, in my opinion. But when you talk to devotees who are not from the West, many Indian devotees, they will freely use curd to refer to yogurt. Dahi. The materially absorbed conditioned soul can be cured by Krishna consciousness as set forth here in the Gita. This process is generally known as yajna or activities, sacrifices simply meant for the satisfaction of Vishnu or Krishna. The more the activities of the material world are performed in Krishna consciousness or for Vishnu only, the more the atmosphere becomes spiritualized by complete absorption. So the activities of the material world, when they are performed for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu, is called a yajna. But there is one condition there. That activity must be a dharmic activity. It can not be an adharmic activity. A dharmic activity. That is it. That means it should be within Vedic dharma. The word Brahman means spiritual. The Lord is spiritual, and the rays of his transcendental body are called Brahmajyoti, his spiritual effulgence. Everything that exists is situated in the Brahmajyoti, but when the Jyoti is covered by illusion, Maya or sense gratification, it is called material. This material veil can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. Thus, the offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness, the consuming agent of such an offering or contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor, and the result are all combined together Brahman, or the absolute truth. The absolute truth covered by Maya is called matter. matter dovetail for the cause of the absolute truth regains its spiritual quality. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman or the Supreme. When the mind is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, it is said to be in samadhi or trance. Anything done in such transcendental consciousness is called yajna or sacrifice for the absolute. So in that sense, as we will see, the Varna Dharma, Ashrama Dharma, all of this can be accepted as yajna, a sacrifice to the Supreme Lord. But only activities which are within Vedic Dharma can be offered to the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, you cannot do. You can marry in Krishna consciousness, you cannot divorce in Krishna consciousness. You can accept a wife in Krishna consciousness, you cannot accept a girlfriend in Krishna. So there are limits to it. It's within Dharma. In that condition of spiritual consciousness, the contributor, the contribution, the consumption, the performer, or leader of the performance, and the result or ultimate gain, everything becomes one in the absolute, the Supreme Brahman. That is the method of Krishna consciousness. Text 25.
दैवमेवा परे यज्ञं योगिनः पर्युपासते ब्रह्माज्ञावा परे यज्ञं यज्ञेनैवो जुह्वति. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering different sacrifices to them, and some of them offer sacrifices in the fire of the Supreme Brahman.
Having described how actions become jnana by having the quest for the Lord and the jiva as the goal, the Lord now speaks specifically of the different types of karma yoga. So, when these very same material activities taught in Vedic Dharma are performed with the desire to realize first the Jivatma and then the Paramatma, then those activities produce an effect of jnana. They produce detachment and realization. So now the Supreme Lord talks about different options. There are different varieties here. Other yogis are devoted to or have complete faith in sacrifice in the form of worship of devatas like Indra. Others, such as those described in the previous verse, are absorbed in offering oblations of ghee and grains into the fire which represents Brahman using the ladle. So in other words, the previous verse, text 24, that spoke about a person who is actually performing fire sacrifices, that type of yajna. But then there are other activities like worship of the demigods and so on. That is also another type of yajna. A person dedicated to such yajna is a yogi. There are different types of yogis according to different types of yajna. There are as many types of yogis as there are types of yajnas. When seeing the different forms, there are thus many types of yajnas and yogis. If one divides them with discernment, with intelligence, all yajnas are either karma yajnas or jnana yajnas. Karma yajnas are also called dravya yajnas, and jnana yajnas are yajnas in the form of spiritual contemplation. These are the two divisions which will be shown later. Now I will speak about the many varieties of yajna. Please listen. The karma yogis worship daiva yajna. They worship using daiva yajna, using worship of devatas. In that, there is worship of Indra, Varuna, and other persons who have been given responsibility of ruling and who are endowed with material abilities by me. By this, they gradually attain Nishkama Karma Yoga. All the Jnana yogis, taking support of the Mahavakya, Tattvamasi, offer the Jiva, Tvam, into Tat, Brahman, using the Pranava mantra, Om. Its superiority will be described later. As described above, a person engaged in discharging duties in Krishna consciousness is also called a perfect yogi or a first-class mystic. As described above means as described in text 24. But there are others also who perform similar sacrifices in the worship of demigods, and still others who sacrifice to the Supreme Brahman or the impersonal feature of the Supreme Brahman. So there are different kinds of sacrifices in terms of different categories. Such different categories of sacrifice by different types of performers only superficially demark varieties of sacrifice. Actually, sacrifice means to satisfy the Supreme Lord Vishnu, who is also known as Yajna. All the different varieties of sacrifice can be placed within two primary divisions, namely sacrifice of worldly possessions and sacrifice in pursuit of transcendental knowledge. Those who are in Krishna consciousness sacrifice all material possessions for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, while others who want some temporary material happiness sacrifice their material possessions to satisfy demigods such as Indra, the sun god, etc. And others who are impersonalists sacrifice their identity by merging into the existence of impersonal Brahman. The demigods are powerful living entities appointed by the Supreme Lord for the maintenance and supervision of all material functions, like the heating, watering, lighting of the universe. Those who are interested in material benefits worship the demigods by various sacrifices according to the Vedic rituals. They are called Bahuvishwaravadi, or believers in many gods. But others who worship the impersonal feature of the absolute truth and regard the forms of the demigod as temporary, sacrifice their individual selves in the supreme fire and thus end their individual existences by merging into the existence of the Supreme. Such impersonalists sacrifice their time in philosophical speculation to understand the transcendental nature of the Supreme. In other words, the fruity workers sacrifice their material possessions for material enjoyment, whereas the impersonalist sacrifices his material designations with a view to merging into the existence of the Supreme. So notice, everywhere you have to sacrifice something. Sacrifice means you have to give up. You give up something in order to be awarded something far superior. Sacrifice is always done for the pleasure of someone, so that that person whom you are pleasing can give me a higher benefit. Like for instance, in demigod worship, there are many things you cannot do. This you cannot do, that you cannot do, because you have to satisfy that deity whom you are worshipping, with the idea that that deity will give you some material benefit, which is far superior. So same way, when you sacrifice all material activities in order to merge into the impersonal Brahman, that is also accepted as some kind of sacrifice. Yes, Prabhu.
In Bhaktivinoda Thakur's purport, it is said, the karma yogis
Worship.
by this, they gradually attain Nishkama Karma Yoga. So in this scene, we have the first stage.
No, this is very advanced. This is already starting with Nishkama Karma. There are many people lower than this.
Nishkama Karma Yoga is
Starting with this, this is Nishkama Karma.
or Karma Yoga. That's the one Karma Yoga. Who are below Nishkama Karma Yoga. Means Karma Karma is Sakama Karma Yoga.
Okay, they are below. They are below. But they are not even. When one comes to this point of accepting all three, okay, karma plus jnana plus bhakti, on a regular basis, and they have accepted the goal of eternal service to the Supreme Lord, Vishnu Tattva, with liberation, then they are Nishkama, come to Nishkama Karma. Anything below that is Sakama Karma. But from Sakama Karma also, Krishna is thinking always how to bring them to the point of Nishkama. That is there.
So previously today we were discussing that Shastri Thakur, he doesn't use the term Sakama. He uses the term Sakarma Karma Yogis. But Srila Prabhupada does not use this term. Yeah.
Generally, as far as I know, you can do a search.
So this is about this point. Yeah? Here it's written Karma Yogis means that which Srila Prabhupada does not use. If Srila Prabhupada mentioned.
Oh, okay. The Karma Yogis in Bhaktivinoda, this paragraph, this refers to the Sakama Karma Yogis.
Yeah.
Correct.
So when Srila Prabhupada uses this term, it means Sakama Karma Yoga.
Yeah, he's falling in hand with Baladev Dev. Yeah, Bhaktivinoda's one is derived. See this. There are two books, Rasik Ranjan, Vidvan Ranjan. So Rasik Ranjan is actually derived from Vishwanath Chakravarti. So it reflects, it summarizes many teachings of Vishwanath Chakravarti. And his language also comes. Useful to know. 26.
श्रुतादि इंद्रियाणि अन्ये संयमाग्निषु जुहति शब्दादीन् Vishayan Anye Indriyagneshu Juvati. Some, the unadulterated brahmacharis, sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of mental control, and others, the regulated householders, sacrifice the object of the senses in the fire of senses.
We worthy with the others, Naishtiki brahmachari, Naishtika brahmachari, offer the senses such as the ear into the fires of processes for controlling each sense. Stopping the senses, they are recognized as preeminent practitioners of sense control. Others, the householders, offer the sense objects such as sound into the senses, such as the ear, which is regarded as a fire. They absorb themselves in this practice of experiencing the sense objects without attachment. The members of the 4 divisions of human life, namely the brahmachari, the grihastha, the vanaprastha, and the sannyasi, are all meant to become perfect yogis or transcendentalists. Since human life is not meant for our enjoying sense gratification like the animals, the 4 orders of human life are so arranged that one may become perfect in spiritual life. The brahmacharis or students under the care of a bona fide spiritual master control the mind by abstaining from sense gratification. A brahmachari hears only words concerning Krishna consciousness. Hearing is the basic principle for understanding, and therefore the pure brahmachari engages fully in Harer Namanu Kirtanam, chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord. He restrains himself from the vibrations of material sounds, and his hearing is engaged in the transcendental sound vibration of Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Similarly, the householders who have some license for sense gratification perform such acts with great restraint. Sex life, intoxication, and meat eating are general tendencies of human society. That sentence is straight from 11th canto of Bhagavatam in English. But a regulated householder does not indulge in unrestricted sex life and other sense gratification. Marriage on the principles of religious life is therefore current in all civilized human society because that is the way for restricted sex life. In fact, throughout the world, you notice that marriages are celebrated. So what is the great thing in celebrating somebody's entrance into sex life? No. Their entrance into sex life is not celebrated. Their statement in public, in front of the Supreme God, that they will not engage in sexual activity with anyone else is what is celebrated. Therefore, it is their vairagya that is celebrated. It is not simply because what some male-female combination, that happens everywhere now. What is the celebration for that? It is because that man is telling the entire public in the presence of God, in the presence of God's representative, usually a priest or someone, that I am going to enjoy this woman and no woman other than this. And the woman is also promising this man and no man other than this whole life. That vow is celebrated. Just like we celebrate the vow of a sannyasi, we celebrate the vow of a grihastha. Similarly, we celebrate the vow of a brahmachari. We celebrate the vow of a one. We celebrate the vow of a chaste woman. We celebrate the vow of a loyal husband. It is that vow that is celebrated. This restricted, unattached sex life is also a kind of yajna because the restricted householder sacrifices a general tendency towards sense gratification for higher transcendental life. So this is also considered one form of yajna. Everywhere we have to sacrifice. Sacrifice means give up something inferior in order to satisfy someone superior, to give us something superior. That sacrifice has to happen everywhere. Text 27.
Sarvani Indriya Karmani Ana Karmani Chapare Atma Sayamya Yogino Juyati Jnanadi Pite. Others who are interested in achieving self-realization to control of the mind and senses, offer the function of all the senses and of the life breath as oblation into the fire of the controlled mind.
Bhakti proponents of oneness, Kaivalya, such as yogis following Patanjali, searching for Pratyagatma. Pratyagatma means the Jivatma. Offer actions of the 10 types of prana and the actions of all the senses into the fire of the pure Jivatma, the object called Swam. The Atma inclined to material objects is called Paragatma. The Atma which rejects material objects is called Pratyagatma. These people conclude that only Pratyeka Atma exists and nothing else, such as mind. The yoga system considers that Patanjali is referred to here. In the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, the soul is called Pratyekatma and Paragatma. As long as the soul is attached to sense enjoyment, it is called Paragatma. Parag means outside. So when the soul is looking outside for enjoyment, then that soul is called a Paragatma. But as soon as the same soul becomes detached from such sense enjoyment, it is called Pratyekatma. When the soul starts looking inside as hankering for internal experience of happiness, then that soul is called Pratyekatma. In English, we have the expression introspective, extrospective. Looking inside or looking outside. The soul is subjected to the functions of 10 kinds of air at work within the body, and this is perceived through the breathing system. The Patanjali system of yoga instructs one on how to control the functions of the body's air in a technical manner, so that ultimately all the functions of the air within become favorable for purifying the soul of material attachment. According to this yoga system, Pratyekatma is the goal. So, right now I am Paragatma. How can I become Pratyekatma? How can I start pursuing internal happiness? Why am I always looking outside through my material subtle body and gross body? I'm looking outside for happiness. Instead of that, when will I look inside? What can I do to attract it inside? According to this yoga system, Pratyekatma is the ultimate goal. This Pratyekatma is withdrawn from activities in matter. The senses interact with the sense objects like the ear for hearing, eyes for seeing, nose for smelling, tongue for tasting, and hand for touching. And all of them are thus engaged in activities outside the self. So, Paragatma is interested in all these activities. They are called the functions of the Pranavayu. The Apana Vayu goes downwards. Vyana Vayu acts to shrink and expand. Samana Vayu adjusts equilibrium. Udana Vayu goes upward. And when one is enlightened, one engages all these in searching for self-realization, inward experience. Yeah, just don't ask me about all this Vayu Bakra. That is the only thing I don't know at all. I want to study about it, I want to understand how prana works. But as of now, I highly confused about all. You should ask some yogi.
Yes, general.
Okay.
During surgery, heart surgery, they transplant the heart. We have like soul is in the region of heart. It is floating because of this virus.
Correct.
So, what is the process? Like somebody's heart is transferred to there. So,
suppose my heart is taken out of this, and you're asking if I'm alive, how am I alive?
where is the soul then? The heart is transferred. So this in their body, or it is
When they normally do heart transplant, they take the heart out, the person dies, no? Huh?
they again do the heart transfer. Then that person is ready.
No, suppose my heart needs to be.
Somebody's heart is a problem.
My heart is a problem, let us say. Then what do they actually do?
They put a new heart.
So this heart is removed and another heart is put.
Put.
Okay, so what is your question?
My question is, at that time,
When
where
my
the soul goes,
old heart is taken out and the new heart is put in between,
where does the soul go?
where am I? You're asking. And the region of the heart. Even Paramatma is in the region of the heart. Jivatma is next to the Paramatma, the region of the heart.
Okay. Irrespective of these airs, there is some theory with air holding this Atma.
No, see, there is it's like this. You have the Annamaya process, the food which is maintained by food, gross body. Okay, then there is a subtle body. In between the gross body and subtle body is where these 10 life airs come. You understand?
Yeah.
Then inside the subtle body is the soul. So soul, super soul, and all is inside that. So now what is your question?
For example,
Did I make it more confused?
for example, it said like when people take contraceptives and all, the womb becomes unfavorable to soul to rest. So soul leaves that place.
No. Karmana, Daivanetrena, Kantu Deko Pupatre, Triya Pravishtodaram, also later Kanashri. The soul takes shelter of sperm, which unites with the ovum produced in the womb of the female. The general principle amongst all creatures which combine biologically. Okay. So now, why contraception is condemned by Prabhupada and standard authorities? Because that sperm has to combine with the ovum. Okay. And that you are preventing it. You're preventing it, no? So even if a Jivatma enters into a sperm, that the sperm is not being allowed to mix with the ovum, the female. Okay. Therefore, it is a crime.
I had an idea that
The contraception thing cannot do anything to the Atma. Atma is spiritual.
the body becomes unfit, I think, and then because of unfit of body, the soul leaves.
No, that is a general principle. When the body becomes unfit, then the soul and super soul will move on to the next body. Correct. That's a general principle. Correct.
So that principle I was applying in the case of heart surgery. When that person's heart is removed, body became unfit for the soul to rest. I was considering that.
Not necessarily. We come across several instances of people whose bodies were preserved and later revived. Even in Vedic Shastri, we come across instances like that. Like we hear in some of the wars between Devas and Daityas, I think the Daityas are killed, and then Shukracharya gives some Sanjeevani medicine, something like that.
Brilliant.
To Bali Maharaj, and then when he administers it, they come back to life. Well, some kind of technology always existed. We can say that if a body is actually unfit, then the soul will be. When it's only temporarily unfit, there must be some method by which women have been knowing this. A heart transplant has never been a big confusion for them. Because it's not the heart, it's the region of the heart. Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Kuddeshe, the Desha in the region of the heart. That applies to the Jivatma also. Okay. 28.
द्रव्य यज्ञस्तपो यज्ञ योग यज्ञस्तप तथा परि स्वाध्याय ज्ञानास्यज्ञश्च यथाय संशिष्ट व्रताः. Having accepted strict vow, some become enlightened by the sacrificing their possessions, and others by performing severe austerities, by practicing the yoga of eightfold mysticism, or by studying the Vedas to advance in transcendental knowledge.
All these may be divided into 4 parts. Dravya Yajna, Tapo Yajna, Yoga Yajna, Swadhyaya Jnana Yajna. Yajnas involving materials are called Dravya Yajna. That means you give in charity materials, specifically food. That's called Dravya Yajna. Dravya means material. Dravya Yajna means the sacrifice of material. Material in the sense of a substance. And always the most important substance in Vedic culture is food. And distributing food in charity is considered a very exalted activity. One of the greatest 5 activities that you can do. I don't have it. I don't know if it is there or not. Yes, I have. Annam Bahupurvita. Produce lot of food. This is a summary, 32-page summary. done by some Mayavadi. But it shows, gives you so much of quotations from the scriptures on the importance of food distribution. Like here, for instance, the Mahabharata recalls the greatness of food and the giving of food in a particularly imposing manner. As is well known in the Mahabharata, Bhishma Pitamaha, the grand wise old man of Kuru Vamsha, gives a long discourse instructing Yudhishthira in great detail about all aspects of Dharma. This discourse runs to about 25,000 verses and forms nearly a quarter of the epic. Bhishma leaves his mortal body almost immediately after the end of this discourse, and Yudhishthira, after much persuasion, undertakes to perform an Ashwamedha Yajna. After accomplishing the Yajna and being relieved of the great effort and activity that such an observance involves, Yudhishthira requests Sri Krishna to let him know the essence of the entire teaching of Bhishma. Sri Krishna, in response, utters just 15 verses, the first 10 of which lay down the centrality of Annadana, the giving of food in the life of a disciplined householder, and the next 5 celebrate the greatness of food, its emergence out of the vital essences of the earth, and its intimate connection with all life. The first verse Sri Krishna utters while summarizing the teachings of Bhishma for Yudhishthira is Annena dharyate sarvam jagadeta characharam annat prabhavati prana pratyaksham nasti samshaya. The world, both animate and inanimate, is sustained by food. Life arises from food. This is observed all around, and there can be no doubt about it. And he ends his discourse on Annadana with Nadah pranado loke pranavah sarvado bhavet tasmadannam visheshena dattavyam bhutimikshata. The giver of food is the giver of life, and indeed of everything else. Therefore, one who is desirous of well-being in this world and beyond should specifically endeavor to give food. Bhavishya Purana. Like that. It goes on. You cannot believe how much the Vedic scriptures talk about giving food in charity. There's a basic principle that you only get what you have given. If in your past life you have given something, then in this life you get it for free. So nobody is just born into a rich family like that. That person must have given wealth in charity, due to which he is getting it back. And if he has done it properly, he will get it back in big bonus. He might have just given 1,000 rupees, and then he gets 1 lakh. So giving food is considered the greatest, considered one of the most important activities of charity that a person can perform. So that is called Dravya Yajna. Those involving austerities such as Krishna, Chandrayana, and Chaturmasya are called Tapo Yajna. Ashtanga Yoga is Yoga Yajna. Deliberating on spiritual and material while deliberating on the meaning of the Vedas is called Jnana Yajna. Those persons concentrating on these 4 types of Yajna are called renunciates with intense vows, sharp vows, samshita pratha. These sacrifices may be fitted into various divisions. There are persons who are sacrificing their possessions in the form of various kinds of charities. In India, the rich mercantile community or princely orders, Vaishya and Kshatriya groups, open various kinds of charitable institutions like Dharmashala, Annakshetra, Atitishala, Anathalaya, and Vidyapita. Dharmashala is a guest house for free. Annakshetra, a place where you give them food for free. Atitishala, that's also a guest house. What's the difference in Dharmashala and Atitishala? I think in Dharmashala it is for pilgrimage. Pilgrimage sites. Anathalaya, orphanage. Vidyapita, school, education. In other countries too, there are many hospitals, old age homes, and similar charitable foundations meant for distributing food, education, and medical treatment free to the poor. All these charitable activities are called Dravya Maya Yajna. In Vedic culture, there are certain things which are meant to be given for free. Food, knowledge, healthcare, justice. These are all meant to be given free. And Mayadeva Prabhupada wanted nobody to go hungry. Make sure that that happens. There are others who, for higher elevation in life or for promotion to higher planets within the universe, voluntarily accept many kinds of austerities such as Chandrayana and Chaturmasya. These processes entail severe vows for conducting life under certain rigid rules. For example, under the Chaturmasya vow, the candidate does not shave for 4 months during the year. He does not eat certain foods, does not eat twice in a day, or does not leave home. Such sacrifice of the comforts of life is called Tapomaya Yajna. There are still others who engage themselves in different kinds of mystic yogas, like the Patanjali system, for merging into the existence of the Absolute, or Hatha Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga for particular perfections. And some travel to all the sanctified places of pilgrimage. All these practices are called Yoga Yajna, sacrifice for a certain type of perfection in the material world. There are others who engage themselves in the studies of different Vedic literature, specifically the Upanishads and Vedanta Sutras or the Sankhya philosophy. With faith, you need to have faith that the Veda only gives true information. All of these are called Swadhyaya Yajna, or engagement in the sacrifice of study. All these yogis are faithfully engaged in different types of sacrifice and are seeking a higher status of life. Krishna consciousness, however, is different from these because it is the direct service of the Supreme Lord. Krishna consciousness cannot be attained by any one of the above-mentioned types of sacrifice, but can be attained only by the mercy of the Lord and his bona fide devotees. Therefore, Krishna consciousness is transcendental. But if these very same activities are executed with Krishna consciousness under the guidance of pure devotees of God, who know how to elevate us from minimized bhakti to maximized bhakti to exclusive bhakti, and with the desire of coming to the goal of prema bhakti, then one is fortunate. Then all of these can be optional pathways through which we can progress. Text 29.
Prane juhvaji pranam prane panam tatha pare prana pana gachirudha prana yama parayanaha apare niyatahara pranan prana sujuhvaji. Still others who are inclined to the process of breath, restrained to remain in trance, practice by offering the movement of the outgoing breath into the incoming, and the incoming breath into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, stopping all breathing. Others, curtailing the eating process, offer the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice.
Please read the purport also.
The system of yoga for controlling the breathing process is called pranayama, and in the beginning it is practiced in the Hatha Yoga system through different sitting postures. All of these processes are recommended for controlling the senses and for advancement in spiritual realization. This practice involves controlling the airs within the body so as to reverse the directions of their passage. The apana air goes downward and the prana air goes up. The pranayama yogi practices breathing the opposite way until the currents are neutralized into puraka equilibrium. Offering the exhaled breath into the inhaled breath is called rechika. When both air currents are completely stopped, one is said to be in kumbhaka yoga. By practice of kumbhaka yoga, one can increase the duration of life for perfection in spiritual realization. The intelligent yogi is interested in attaining perfection in one life without waiting for the next. For by practicing kumbhaka yoga, the yogis increase the duration of life by many, many years. A Krishna-conscious person, however, being always situated in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, automatically becomes a controller of the senses. His senses, being always engaged in the service of Krishna, have no chance of becoming otherwise engaged. So, at the end of life, he is naturally transferred
to the transcendental plane of Lord Krishna. Consequently, he makes no attempt to increase his longevity. He is at once raised to the platform of liberation, stated in Bhagavad Gita. Manchayo yavicharena bhakti yogina sevate sagunam samatitya brahma bhuya yakalpate. One who engages in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord transcends the modes of material nature and is immediately elevated to the spiritual platform. A Krishna conscious person begins from the transcendental state. He is constantly in that consciousness. Therefore, there is no falling down, and ultimately he enters into the abode of the Lord without delay. The practice of reduced eating is automatically done when one eats only Krishna prasadam, or food which is offered first to the Lord. Reducing the eating process is very helpful in the matter of sense control. And without sense control, there is no possibility of getting out of the material entanglement.
So these are various ways to achieve pratyahara. I don't know if I have mentioned earlier. Do not have it as noted. And pratyahara. Para means the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Anushilana means to be absorbed in thinking about him, in serving him, and so on. Then pratyahara means to withdraw the senses from the sense objects, the mind and the senses from sense objects. So Prabhupada keeps it very simple. He says, on one hand, we want to become attached to Krishna. On the other hand, we want to become detached from Maya. So, Paranushilanam is attachment to Krishna. Increasing attachment to Krishna. Then Pratyahara is increasing detachment from Maya. Now, both needs to be executed. It is not enough that I only add Krishna into my life. I have to add Krishna and I have to subtract Maya. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, if one is capable of only exclusively engaging in the activities of Krishna consciousness, Krishna Bhakti, then he does not have to separately endeavor for Pratyahara. But most of us actually require to simultaneously work on both. So it is useful to keep away from sense objects. Parallelly, we put effort to that, and parallelly, we put an effort to engage in the activities of Krishna consciousness. So all of these that we have seen so far, all the different forms of yajna, they are all different forms of pratyahara. And Paranushilana is nothing but Navavida Bhakti, one or more different types of Navavida Bhakti. So that is important, this is also important. Without sense control, there is no possibility of getting out of the material entanglement. There is no possibility of attaining Brahman realization or Paramatma realization or Bhagavan realization. The goal of a Bhakti yogi is to attain Bhagavan realization. 30.
सर्वे अपि एते यज्ञविदो यज्ञाक्षपिता कल्मषा यज्ञ शिष्टा अमृता भुजो yanti brahma sanatanam. All these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions, and having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifices, they advance toward the supreme eternal atmosphere.
These knowers of yajna, who all desire to conquer the senses, by practicing the previously described sacrifices, destroy their sins by these sacrifices. The secondary results are described. They enjoy the nectar of the remnants of sacrifice, such as food and the attainment of enjoyment and power. The main results are then described. As stated previously, by the perfection of jnana, they finally attain Brahman. So that is Vishnu Chakravarti. That is not Baladev Vidya at all. Anyway, Ete Khalu Indriya Vijay Kama Sarvepi Yajyavidaha. All of these persons who are desiring conquest over their senses, all of them, they know the truth about Yajna. Purvakan Devadi Yajnan Uttamana. They carry out the different forms of Yajna that have been noted here. Taireva Yajna Shapta Kalmasha. Through those very Yajnas, all of their contaminations are destroyed. And then wait. No. Baladev devotion here also. That's Sadhyana, Jnanena, Brahmeti Pranjat. Correct. Bhakti Vinod Thakur. All of these are knowers of the tattva of sacrifice and destroy sin through yajna. After enjoying the sweet remnants of the yajna, they finally attain the previously described eternal Brahman. Prabhupada's purport. From the foregoing explanation of different types of sacrifice, namely sacrifice of one's possessions, study of the Vedas, or philosophical doctrines and performance of the yoga system, it is found that the common aim of all is to control the sense. Sense gratification is the root cause of material existence. Therefore, unless and until one is situated on a platform apart from sense gratification, there is no chance of being elevated to the eternal platform of full knowledge, full bliss, and full life. This platform is in the eternal atmosphere or Brahman atmosphere. All the above mentioned sacrifices help one to become cleansed of the sinful reactions of material existence. By this advancement in life, not only does one become happy and opulent in this life, but also at the end, he enters into the eternal kingdom of God, either merging into the impersonal Brahman or associating with the Supreme Personality of God in Krishna. So in either case, the idea is to come to the point of controlling the senses, keeping the senses away from sense organs, and go in. That is the place where Prabhupada has spoken about let's see. Okay, spiritualists, they are interested in no. There's another place where Prabhupada says that materialist and a spiritualist, the distinction between them is a materialist is hankering for happiness outside, and a spiritualist is hankering for happiness inside. That's a very important distinction between the materialist and the spiritualist. 31.
Shastri, without sacrifice and can never live happily on this planet or in this life, what then of the next?
Wait. What is the verse number? 4.31. Nayam, is it Nayam the first two? Nayam locos. Yeah, yes. Yet Kutonya Kurusattam. Correct? Vidvan. Tad agarane doshamaha. To not perform this is a problem. The fault in not performing the sacrifice is described. He who does not perform the sacrifices just described does not achieve this material world of artha, dharma, and kama. What to speak of liberation? So he does not even attain dharma, artha, kama. Trivarga nasti. Even Trivarga he does not attain. So there is a question of liberation, moksha. Trivarga means dharma, artha, kama. Therefore, Arjuna, best of the Kuru, the person who does not perform sacrifice attains nothing in this life. What to speak of the next? Therefore, yajna is a necessary karma. In this, one should understand that smartha, varnashrama dharma, ashtanga yoga, and Vaidika yajna are all yajna. Brahma jnana is a special yajna. There is no karma except yajna in this world. Everything else is vikarma. In other words, this is the right way to perform one's material prescribed duties. If one does not perform one's material prescribed duties, while accepting one's subordination to Lord Vishnu, in other words, if that yajna is not performed as a yajna, if that, Krishna described different varieties, we can give him charity and all that. But for that to yield dharma, in this life, you need to get punya. That in the next life will give you extraordinary artha and extraordinary kama. This is what is known as trivarga. This life, you just transfer some punya into your account. Next life, it will fructify in the form of artha kama. This is the method that is presented. So even in this life, you are not earning any punya. You don't earn any punya, what are you going to get in your next life? So that is Krishna's logic, that if you don't perform yajna, then you basically lost it. You will get nothing. Everything is lost. Whatever form of material existence one is in, one is invariably ignorant of his real situation. In other words, existence in the material world is due to the multiple reactions to our sinful lives. Ignorance is the cause of sinful life, and sinful life is the cause of one's dragging on in material existence. The human form of life is the only loophole by which one may get out of this entanglement. The Vedas, therefore, give us a chance for escape by pointing out the paths of religion, economic comfort, regulated sense gratification, and at last, the means to get out of the miserable condition entirely. The path of religion or the different kinds of sacrifice recommended above automatically solves our economic problems. By performance of yajna, we can have enough food, enough milk, etc. Even if there is a so-called increase of population, when the body is fully supplied, naturally the next stage is to satisfy the senses. The Vedas prescribe therefore sacred marriage for regulated sense gratification. Thereby, one is gradually elevated to the platform of release from material bondage. And the highest perfection of liberated life is to associate with the Supreme Lord. Perfection is achieved by performance of yajna, sacrifice as described above. Now, if a person is not inclined to perform yajna according to the Vedas, how can he expect a happy life even in this body? And what to speak of another body on another planet? There are different grades of material comforts in different heavenly planets. And in all cases, there is immense happiness for persons engaged in different kinds of yajna. But the highest kind of happiness that a man can achieve is to be promoted to the spiritual planets by practice of Krishna consciousness. A life of Krishna consciousness is therefore the solution to all the problems of material existence. 32. What? Okay, let's take a break.